Whoa, whoa, folks. New haircut. Who's this? Um, so I got the curls chopped a little shave on the side, all that stuff. Um, Starting the episode hot, folks. Biggest thing. Welcome back to the Code Chronicles. It is Pags, your lovely host. I wanted to immediately just pay a sense of gratitude. We smashed through another goal of 50 subscribers, 1,000 views. We're actually far past that at this point. And I really just have to say, guys, like, my mind is a little bit blown because because these goals of like 50 subscribers, 1,000 views initially felt like so much for me, and even 5 subscribers, 100 views, and the fact that we're at 50 subscribers, 1,000 views, smashed through that actually farther now. By the time this video comes out, we might be at the next goal already. That's what happened with the last one. Was I put out a goal, and by the time that video came out, I was already past the next goal. So yeah, we're just gonna keep it up. Not that these goals are important to me. They're kind of frivolous. They're just jewelry on top of being able to record and hopefully provide a little bit of value for you guys. But it's cool. It's cool seeing that it's growing. So before diving into the task manager, I just wanted to say a huge thank you for that. And then, of course, there's my software engineering course. The Teachable link in the description below supports me a ton. Signing up for that and walking through my system. I'm uploading to the modules. Each week I'm kind of uploading stuff. And I think by the time this comes out, there's actually a React authentication concepts video that I just put out. And yeah, by the time this video is out, that should be well out by now. And that video is going over just kind of exactly sample material where it's like music in the background. It's really curated. It's something where hopefully there's some good value there. And my course isn't to like guarantee anything. There's no like end expectation, like, oh, you'll learn how to become a FANG engineer or something in a week, right? That's not realistic. But it is saying, I'm gonna make you better. I'm gonna offload all these concepts that I picked up being an enterprise front-end software engineer and just offload them. And I'm doing that here as well. So that's kind of what the series is about. And I love the series because it's just kind of like a live, long format of just debugging. And I think today is going to be one of those days of debugging. We'll slide into the episode agenda here shortly. But I did just want to talk about that and paying respect and gratitude for everyone watching the channel, liking the videos, leaving some comments. It's really exciting for me. So guys, thank you, because I haven't told anybody in my like network of friends and stuff. This is something I'm just doing by myself, kind of curated, in my little neck of the woods, my thing that I get to do privately. And like even my girl doesn't even know how much I'm recording and putting out episodes, and I love it that way. It's something cool that I get to do. So it's like me time, and it's cool that I get to share it with you guys, and you guys are somewhat enjoying it, or some people are, right? But let's dive in. I've got some pop music playing in the headphones, just some instrumentals per usual. Today I wanted to get this users database working. So last episode, I believe we wrapped things in Prisma. We wrapped the database in Prisma here. And I built out a few things, task and task status. I got that configured, and making the relationships between the task status and task. I didn't like how I had to do that. I thought I could have made them all together, but there was a lot of debugging and just figuring it out. And then I started adding this users schema and building that relationship to the tasks themselves. So the idea is we want to be able to assign tasks to users, and we also want to be able to make users. So I was messing, you might see on the right side how there's this create user right here. Maybe I'll go over some of the material I did on the back end. Here's the update task with our new task status thing. When we swapped over to Prisma instead of using MongoDB's schema, we've now deprecated MongoDB's schema. So this is all Prisma. You'll see prisma.task to find the unique task where the task ID is this. Very, very reminiscent with the data object of, I believe, a MySQL table. Um, but I wanted to, for the people who saw the earlier episodes, they saw maybe the JSON that I want to say, no. Oh, and we did get the DB drawing icon, or not icon, excuse me, extension. I mentioned that on the previous episode, I believe, of just talking about how the guy at Next.js had his tables and data all drawn out or drew out. All of it was wrote down, and it was really cool to see how organized he was. So it was very inspiring, and I stole that. But so this is how the tasks originally were made. They were kind of made off of this schema. When in one of the earlier episodes, it's an array of these tasks, and the task status itself is an array as well. And previously in Mongo, we were just passing them forward as that schema when we were creating tasks. But with Prisma, we had to break apart the task status and the task. And I didn't know you had to do that. I really didn't. But I'm learning. I'm learning stuff on the back end, and I think it's ultimately going to be fruitful in the long run for us doing that. So that's what some of the debugging was, and creating that yesterday was, or 2 days ago. Sorry guys, I'm a little bit disoriented as well. This is going to sound ridiculous, but before we dive in, I think it's a funny story to tell, or maybe I'll tell it while I'm kind of diving in, while I'm trying to build this user. Okay, so yeah, let me slow down for a hot second. The thing I'm doing now is I just want to focus on building a user and getting a user into our database, which I believe I've successfully done with their ID. So let's pull it open. Hold on, let me make the connection, and boom. Okay, so let's go to Taskify. We built our new database. We have our task object, our task status, and our users. So basically, I just want to build out the users object a little bit more today. I think is going to be the goal, and there's going to be a little bit of debugging with that because we've got to pull from clerk, get the ID from clerk, and ultimately pull that in. I believe is how we should do that. That is what Chester roughly recommended, was attach that to your users, or build your own authentication service. But I don't want to do that because there's a lot that goes into that. Awesome. So while I kind of just work on building out this user object and getting the ID into the user, and that's what this is, the full name, right? Like I want to attach the name to the user, so I'll try my best to talk that through while talking about a story that kind of happened this last weekend. So it was like 2 or 3 days ago, and I'm grabbing socks out of the dryer. Just the most silly thing, right? Like not even a big deal. Just grabbing socks out of the dryer, and 2 of them fall on the floor. And I bend over to pick up the socks off the floor, and the socks, I grab them, but the dryer door was still open. And behind me, or above my head, I raise from grabbing the socks, and I just smashed the back of my head so hard on this dryer door. It hurt so bad, more than you can imagine, And my girlfriend was there, and it was just not fun. It was not fun. It hurt so bad. And I'm in genuine pain in it. And I feel like I'm the type of person who can take a little bit of I don't notice pain. I've broken a wrist, didn't cry, you know what I mean? Broken ribs, it's not a big deal to me. I broke my collarbone, and that did hurt, but I didn't even shed a tear type thing, and it just hurt, right? So it definitely hurt a lot, right? Getting smacked in the head by the dryer door, and I was a little bit disoriented, not the biggest disorientation in the world, but enough where it was a hard ring on the bell, and it hurt so bad. And Um, and I just couldn't, like, I didn't know where I was at for a bit. I don't know, it just like shook me up for a bit, and I was dizzy. I still feel nauseous to this day. This was like 2 or 3 days ago. So really, I probably shouldn't be doing too much software work, and I'll probably keep this episode short if my head starts hurting. Because long story short is, like, I think I might have sustained a bit of a concussion from a dryer door. It's like embarrassing, because it's a dryer door. But there's like a huge knot on the back of my head, and it's just like, oh, not fun, right? Like, not very fun at all. Not very fun at all. So a bit of a kick, and a bit of maybe me. Let's see what we got to handle here. Dashboard app. One of the components is using use effect. So we're gonna have to configure something. I think it's the base task table and completed task. But point being is, like, it has taken a lot for me mentally to speak, write software, and build out these ideas of how to do stuff like this really quick. So forgive me today if I'm moving a little bit slow, and it might be a shorter episode because I can kind of already feel the back of my head hurting a little. Let's see what the error is. You're importing a component that needs use effect. It only works. Oh gosh, but and to add to it, so my girlfriend's sister is a nurse, and she's asking her all the nice questions. Hey, Ryan hit his head. What's what are we looking at? Is it a big deal? Is it a small deal? And her sister's like, dude, you might need to go check it out with a doctor or something, because it's not good if you're feeling nauseous after getting bumped in the head. That's not a good deal. So I definitely need to schedule an appointment with a doctor. I'm happy though that it's been not hurting. Like this morning, I woke up feeling really good, but 2 days ago when it happened, it like I don't mean to be dramatic or whatnot, but it was not very fun. It was not fun. But you can't keep me away from software. I really do enjoy doing this. And even last night I was writing some software. I was like, I have to. So my timeline might be a little bit fuzzy on when I recorded the last episode. I think it was 2 days ago. And I vaguely remember when the concussion was. I think it was also 2 days ago, like 2 nights ago. But yeah, so a little bit fuzzy in the mental capacity right now, but we're still going to go ahead and get this thing done, or at least try our best. Failed attempt to call user store. Let's see what's going on. Okay, so it doesn't like clerk being called on a client side component, this auth object. So maybe we can instantiate it somewhere else. I was trying that. I think last night I was trying that. I was building out the APIs folder in the pages directory. For this, boom, here's what I was doing. I was pulling clerk in. Because basically we want to take this ID. This is just a date.now. I was passing in a test that the endpoint's working, but we basically want to take that and let's see, res.data, and we want to let's see, just set user ID, but we want to append that to our user object, and the reason is then we can easily identify who's logged in. I think that's the way to do it. But maybe in Spirit we can at least add like the user name and stuff, const update user. Sync rec.res. Let's see, try catch block. We definitely want one of those. Just steal this error. Error occurred while updating user. Okay. And let's see. So we want const user await. Let's go to the task controller and see how we updated some users or updated some tasks. Update task. We receive everything from the request body. Side note, I did mess around with TRPC, and I think I mentioned that in the last episode. But I did start to mess around with TRPC, and let's see, task status is never used here. Interesting. If task status, okay, I probably need to use that if I'm going to update the task, but I think I still can update the task now. So let's see real quick. But I did mess with TRPC, and I think the idea behind TRPC is auto completion and type safety. Nice. So it does work. I don't understand how this is updating the status. Let me look at this for a second. Make sure we're not missing anything. But I think TRPC is just that endpoint connection where maybe we wouldn't have to use stores anymore to kind of collect all of our endpoints. I'm not sure. I'll have to look more into TRPC, and all the payloads would be type safed appropriately, which I almost don't want though, because there's times when I don't want to pass in the ID, for instance, creating the user. I don't want the front end to necessarily handle that. Maybe we want the server side to handle that. Or like task, I don't want task to generate IDs. I want the backend to generate the ID for the task, and we do that. So I don't want that to be part of the payload, but it is required when so I don't know. I'll have to look into TRPC and see how they would handle those discrepancies in payloads, or if you can type them out beforehand or something. Because it is required, right, to send an ID with a task on the back end, but it wouldn't be required on the front end. But you would want the type to be required, because that is, you want all tasks to have IDs. So I don't know. I'll have to think about that too. But not right now. My head's already feeling a little bit fuzzy. So let's see, task status, const task status, if task status, Prisma task status, create task status here. So this is for update task. Why would that not be used? Update data. Okay, I see. But do we set this into update data as well? Does this object get into update data? Prisma task, update task, task ID. I don't see how task status is being used. But it's working. So, and I think the update data object here should be including task status somehow. All right, but we won't focus too much more on that. That's just, yeah. I'm sure there's some funny facial expressions I just probably did there, but yeah, let's go ahead and update the user. Let's see how this goes. But I felt confused or I still feel confused on how this task status is getting updated if it's never being used. Prisma.taskStatus.create. So I'll have to dig into that, make sure I'm doing that correctly, because now I'm a little bit looking at that doesn't make sense to me. But let's just go ahead and look at users, find unique. Looks like you find the user ID or the user by user ID. So I'm guesstimating. So we'll say where we'll have to pull in user ID. Looks like it's already wanting to do that. So where user ID is going to be, yep, rec.params user ID, but we'll just destructure it, stay consistent. Looks like that's actually out of the try catch block. So we'll say user ID equals rec.params, or probably rec.body if we're going to use it from clerk. and boom, looks like you can do that. Maybe it's just ID in Prisma, I think is what it is, which I don't like. I like it to be user ID. So maybe I'll update the Prisma schema later, but maybe not. So it looks like I find the user. So I find the user. Okay, so if no user, let's see, do a little error handling. So user not found. Oh. And then looks like I'm building an object here. But we may not need to do that. We might just be able to skip to kind of this portion. But why am I pulling the updated task? Let's see if task, where am I using task? Prisma.task. Is that just to validate that there is a task that exists? My head hurts, folks. Okay, so where task ID, looks like I'm finding task and then updating it with the updated data object. Okay. So maybe I can do this. And let's say we're going to pull in the username as well. And let's see what, actually, you know what? I can also say const updated user. It's going to be just an object here. Updated user, and we can go ahead and copy some of these things. If username updated user dot username equals username. Oh, but it may not be username. It might just be name in the schema. Let's see. This is why I don't like doing this. I had ChatGPT write out the schema, so I don't like that. User, updated user. Trying to calmly think. Folks. Okay, so if there's a username from the request body, we want the updated user dot name to be this. Looks like I need to do partial, forgot, and user. And that needs to come in from Prisma client. Let's see if that helps us here. Pulling that in. Okay, we got our type proper, it looks like. So I'll say name. Let's try that out. I think that's it. Updated username, and let's look at the schema, see what's required. User ID is required. I really don't like the double naming. And the ID, user ID, I'd rather just it all be user ID, task ID. So, but I have task ID and ID. Oh, because the task gets assigned to, why is that? Okay, so I might have a behind the scenes thing where I just rename all this stuff because I want task status ID, I want task status name, like how it looks up here, and I use ChatGPT to kind of help, but I want it to be like this. In fact, maybe we'll do that now. It seems like a low enough thing for my head to handle right now. User tasks. Just go ahead and start with the users, and we'll have to regenerate the contract or the types and the schema and all that stuff. So let's see. Oh, and then we change the references because now it's not referencing the ID. It's referring to user ID, I believe. References is user ID. I know there's probably going to be people who think that's a unnecessary thing to do, but I don't know. In my mind, it just like, I don't have to think about it when I'm writing functions. I don't have to do all that. For maintenance, it's really easy to tell if it's the username that's like broken. And then in the entire application, I can just do search user ID. I can find it everywhere in the application in no time at all. So I really enjoy it, but I do know this is going to break some stuff. So the question is, what is it going to break? Let's see. Can we do username here? Username does not exist on TaskID. What are the fields here? User ID, where does that come from? Should still be user ID now. Just want it all to be the same, all uniform, TaskID. If that still works, I'm not sure. We might be breaking some stuff here. Because maybe we want to hold off on updating the user for now and just literally focus on renaming and make sure the application still works, right? But it will lighten things. I promise it does. I promise it does. Because you can easily identify if we search for ID right now in the application, for instance, where do we go? You know, like there's so many IDs, but when it's task status ID, you know it's like it's the task status ID. You should never use that for any other naming. So let's just see if this still works. If we change the status to update, if it pops over to the update column. Let's see. Let's refresh. Nice. Okay, so it's still working. And let's see if we can change the priority. Nice, that works. Okay, it just needs to requery a column whenever there's that update for priority. So handle that another day, but let's continue down. Make sure all of our task controller is proper. So user ID, I'm not going to deal with right now. That's just kind of what we're using with clerk. Let's go to the task controller. Task name, nice. Okay. So what is this? Where does the ID come from? Let me close out this, and we're going to give us a little bit more room. Actually, let's just close out the schema for now. Just go through them all, you know, make sure we're all spick and span, and boom. So right here, user ID. And from the task store, looks like we're receiving something called user ID. Task ID, let's see. From post task. User ID, just hard coding it in right now. Boom, okay. Prisma user ID. This all needs to be user ID. Task name, task ID, task priority. Love it, love it, love it. This is where we need to change task status name to task status name. We'll deal with that object in a sec. Right now, we're just looking for the user IDs. Looks like we're all good to go, roughly. Updated task ID. Okay, so in theory, task ID right here. Looks like there's one here. So let's swap that out. Make sure all of our spelling is proper. Let's generate the contract, see if that just instantly fixes our errors. Task ID number is not assignable to. Just double check, make sure user ID, task ID. And even stuff like this, I don't want it to be user. I want it to be like user assigned to task, because that's what it is. Because even like user, again, if we search our entire thing and we have a problem with the user assigned to task functionality, how do we instantly go to this when there's going to be create user, there's going to be assign user to team, there's going to be assign user to project, right? Like there's a lot of things that go with it. So I like to be very, very, very verbose about my naming personally. And I know it could be redundant, but I really don't think it is. Okay. And I think our last problems are now coming with the task status. So task ID. Let's see, task ID. What is this? What was it supposed to be? Just ID? Task ID. Let's go ahead and just search everything according to this capitalization. Okay, task ID. We want task ID. We want task ID, just like this. Replace everything. Same with Prisma. We want it to be that. Let's just regenerate the contract. See if that fixes us. Might. Looks like we're having an error here. Task ID is assignable. We're task status. Where input object literal may only specify properties. Task ID does not exist in type task status where input. Did you mean task ID lowercase? I don't even see where we have task ID lowercase anymore. So I'm going to close out real quick. Task ID uppercase, task ID lowercase, nada. So, and you could see relatively quickly, like outside of these like auxiliary files, we can easily see where task ID is being used in the entire. So if you have an issue with task ID or something like that, you just go to your task controller. Boom, it's there, right? The routes, it just becomes a lot easier to debug and maintain. So that's what I'm striving to do right here. Let's see, data. And I wonder partially too if it's because we have old data in our database. So if I drop all these tables, would it, because that has been a problem with Prisma as well, is if I'm like assigning a new thing to, like I had it with the ID issue, if I was pushing an ID into a table that had this schema, it was throwing a fit. It was not enjoying it. So because this ID it's taking the ID from MongoDB and automatically mapping it to the object here, which is a good thing to do too. So I really want both, right? I kind of want the users to have both an object ID and their clerk ID, their authentication ID, right? So I'm not opposed to that. Even though I don't like it, I really don't, but user ID looks like, oh, so this would be auto-generated then. But I don't want to keep track of two IDs also. So is there a way where I can map everything to the clerk ID? Because right now this is getting mapped to the MongoDB ID, this ID right here. Let's go back to our controller real quick and just fix these bugs. Task ID. Where is this coming from? Task status. Prisma client, task status. Looks like it's one of these. But I see task ID here. Task ID needs to be unique. User ID. So it looks like I do have 2 IDs for most things, which I don't like. But it's pulling that from the DB. Okay. I might need to chat with Chester on how to generate users properly. Might be a conversation here, but okay. So let's not use too much of my head today. I think just a wildly average debugging episode. Maybe all that comes from today, guys. I'm really trying my best. Just, obviously going in halftime today or quarter time even, which I don't understand why this isn't working. The user ID, type user ID, Prisma.user, find unique. And this is my schema. I don't have user ID, lowercase. Unless the entire application, like I don't know if they have a rule that automatically camel cases everything for them, like only has 2 characters, or excuse me, doesn't allow any other characters next to capital characters be capital. Maybe that's built into Prisma. I have no idea. That seems wild, but if that's the case, then we can do the lowercase ID. I just like to have like URL, ID, all that stuff. Not be camel case totally, but I will change it to this if Prisma will play nice with us. Let's see if that fixes our problems. Task ID, and then let's regenerate the script. Excuse me, the schemas and stuff. Task ID, okay, task ID number. User ID, it's not liking that change, and I'm curious to why. Okay, we'll go back then, but no. Sorry guys, I'm gonna zoom out a little. Just need to kind of see what's going on. Okay, so we're passing in task ID, for instance, for the update task function. Let's just identify that. So I'm passing in the task ID from either the params or the body. Would this be the body then? Because we're pulling it in from here. So it looks like that's going to be the body. Let's see. Why is that? Oh, I see. It's coming from the parameter. Okay. So it is coming from the params. So I don't need to pull it in actually, because it's coming from right here. Okay, task ID. Let's see if I can just do the old shorthand trick on ES6. No. Huh. Now that has me confused, because why is Prisma saying we want it the other way? Does it just take a second to update or something? Task ID, task ID, task ID. It should all be task ID, I thought. Fields, or is the fields different from the relationship? Does the fields need to be a different thing? So I would imagine you could just pass in the object as it needs the, naming, right? So let's see, update task, find unique. Let's see, guys, let's see. It's not assignable on type task where unique input. Object literal may only specify properties, but task ID does not exist in type task where input. Did you mean to write task ID? No, I didn't. And where are you getting task uppercase ID from? Okay, I'm going to close out. We'll do a developer reload. And let's go to the task controller again. Let's see if that just fixed it. Give it a sec. Did it? Looks like the IntelliSense is up to date. Looks like okay. All right, so let's make sure our server's up and running then. Nope, there it goes. Okay. Had us in the first half, guys. Had us in the first half. I thought it was working. So why would this not work then? That is so interesting. I don't understand why would, oh, you know what? Maybe it is looking at the old task ID, which is this. Okay, so I'm going to try to drop these tables then. Let's drop the collection. Let's see if that works. Or we could have made a new database, one of the two, because that one did work, but we don't want it to just work. We want it to be properly done. Let's see if I don't know why that would be a thing though in VS Code. I don't think it should have access to VS Code. That doesn't make sense, right? Okay, I'm gonna pop it in ChatGPT real quick, and I just hope it can maintain the schema. So we're gonna need the schema, and can you fix these bugs here? Here is my Prisma schema. Okay. So it just doesn't make sense to me, because I feel like if it's task ID right here like this, like lowercase or uppercase, either direction we go to choose, right? I feel like it should just be referenced this way the entire time. Would it not? You know? So let's see what ChatGPT is saying. Task ID. I think it's saying to change the Prisma schema. Guys, I know this is kind of a boring episode, or at least uneventful, but sometimes that is software engineering, is you know, we have to handle the boring stuff. Task status name. I forgot to change these before popping that in there. So task status timestamp, maybe we could do that, or task ID. So should this be task status ID? Looks like. Or is it relating to the task ID up here? Sorry guys, it probably didn't help that I bumped the head pretty hard. That does not help, I know that. So I'm going to pop this in. And let's pop this in as well. The controller. Oh. It's talking about the update task one. Okay. looks like it's working, or should be. TaskID, but we still have that same issue. I don't know what it is, guys. I really don't. So we could go back to the ID way, the way it was working. It just didn't make sense in my brain. Like I don't know. It just wasn't adding up. So it wouldn't be a tough change to go back to of just all of this, right? And obviously all these files too got changed too, which isn't fun. So I'd probably be best just going to a previous commit, but yeah, guys. So a bit of a lower episode today. Sorry for the head bump that hasn't helped at all, but you know, it's important to talk about because I do know it's going to affect my software engineering performance for at least, you know, a week or two, hopefully less, hopefully far less, right? But yeah, my brain is not registering this very easily, and I'm sure it's a simple thing. Sure, it's you know, something I'm just overlooking. Like maybe the keys can't match the keys from the schema can't match the keys from everywhere else, right? So where are we pulling in TaskID from the params? It's supposed to be TaskID. So I just don't understand why we can't just pass it in like this, right? Being truthful. Prisma task. So I will do some homework. Hopefully not too much, right? But just enough to kind of figure out these subtleties, because this is something that I definitely want to do now. I noticed it when I was building these schemas or throwing them off to ChatGPT that I was getting a little loosey-goosey with it. And I do not want to do that with this build because I know it seems like a boring episode, but this is a good lesson, right? And I've done it in builds before, and then by the end of the build, you're like, it's all over the place. And if I'm catching myself now saying, no, we need to be very, very firm about these rules, not because it's a pain right now, because obviously it is a little bit of a pain. And even if I didn't get bumped in the head, this is still going to be a pain, right? But because it's going to help the maintainability down the road when we're debugging, when we're adding new features, when everything's just, we can easily lay it out, when it's all read out proper, it all of a sudden becomes a much easier thing to work with instead of dealing with things. And I did have an idea actually to have a user ID and a ID associated to the user. So this would be its own. So every schema can have an ID, but we can just reference or look things up actually by whatever we need to. I guess that would work too. By task ID. So if they're all unique in the database, I guess technically we should be able to look up things, even if we have two IDs associated to it. Because I do like the idea of MongoDB generating an ID next to it, and maybe that could be better for authentication purposes anyways. So i.e. if we have a clerk, maybe for like the user specifically, clerk will pass in the user ID from clerk, but in some sense that someone could actually just pass in, the same user ID and technically get access to that account. But if they have to pass in the user ID and the ID associated with the database, that is something they can't do, and the password too. So it looks like there's going to be some things that, I don't know, maybe this does work out for the better, but the larger point before all of that is definitely, this is not task ID. This needs to be task status ID, task status name. But that is what I definitely learned in software engineering is like, do not become lazy on these things, right? Because these things will come around undeniably and bite you in the butt, right? Where if all of a sudden we're not aligned on the same casing, the same naming, the same all that stuff, it is very easy to get sloppy very quick. But that is something we are not going to do. That is for sure. So task ID, does this need to be task status ID here, potentially? References. So this I think points to here, the user ID, and then this one points to here. So maybe we won't say user, but user assigned to task. Again, being very explicit. And I say this too because I had an engineer and I never like referencing this, but there was something that he told me about this where he didn't do that himself. And something I mentioned in my software engineering course, or sometimes I've mentioned maybe here, I think in the Code Chronicles. I'll give you guys an example because I'll need to fix this in a sec. But I like to do as little as abstractions as possible when I can and when I understand the stack and everything, where everything's named the same, even on the front end to back end. Let's go to the front end real quick and just unpack some of these ideas. Actually, let's talk about one of the stores. So the reason is why I want the task to be named the task, or even like fetched task, or or whatever variables we're going to end up using for stuff, whether it's, modal or whatever. And if we pull that piece of data, let's say it's the user ID here or whatever it is on the back end, right? In one of our controllers, if we pull this piece of data from the back end, and then if we change it, let's say, because there's like 3 places we have to do this, right? So we have to build an endpoint that goes to the database. So there's going to be a database schema. That's number 1, right? We have our Prisma schema. Then number 2, we have a controller. Okay, and then I guess we have our routes and stuff, but for sake of data handling, we have our schema, which goes to our database. That's the shape that gets pushed into the database. Our controller is one abstraction. Then we have our task store. And then what's a good example? Maybe like the dashboard page or the Kanban page. Boom, would be like our 4th abstraction, right? Where, let's see. So let me pull up a base column, right? Whatever front end component, right? But basically you have like 4 layers of abstraction. And if we rename stuff, let's say we just put ID here. And then in the user controller, we put like user's ID, just like a simple typo, just a different thing. And then in the task store, we like manipulate it to like assign, instead of task name, we're like the task name, right? And do something like this. So this is what the backend would receive, is the task name, and this is what the front end is passing in. And then let's say in our column, instead of passing in task name, it's like, you know what I mean? Like we have another task name, and then we pass that in, because JavaScript doesn't care what it's actually named, right? It's just going to rename it on the back end, right? So the only reason why we're getting an error here is because we just have base input referring to task name when it should be another task name. But when you pass objects in, JavaScript doesn't care. It just cares about the position you pass it in. So if we go to the store, the task store. When we go to post task, it just cares right here. So it's the same object. But if we wanted to name it this and pass it in like this, and say the task name is coming in as this, it'll still work. It's just incredibly confusing. So let me undo some of these changes so we don't get too far from our application. So that should fix it. But the point I'm trying to make is that would all be for like the task name or the user ID or something. Like if at every step we renamed everything, just even a little bit, to user's ID or a different casing, if there's one problem, and let's say there's 3 problems, but let's just say there's just one problem even. You now have to debug in 4 or 5 different areas. And debugging can already be difficult enough, but it's easy. It's easier to just like, and you guys have probably seen it in the series if you're following, we're all like start on the front end, be like, okay, I'm sending the payload. Okay, let's go to the store. Okay, the payload's being sent in the store. Okay, let's go to the controller. Okay, now let's check the schema or something, right? Or vice versa. Now that we're renaming the schema, okay, let's go to the schema. Let's go to the controller. Let's go to the store. Let's go to the front end. And that way it's all going to be like uniform throughout the entire thing on both ends. And I think that's what TRPC is doing. So maybe it's an opportunity to integrate and look into TRPC and Zod. But I just wanted to explain that because I had a really, really talented engineer and like very talented, and he did not do that. And they always blew my mind because I was like, dude, that is such a you're just adding extra abstractions, which inevitably, like you're opening the door to unknowns, like just so many problems that you can't even calculate. And then, you know, when their build and in production wasn't making certain things, or certain things would break and other things would break, and you got to write tests around it and that, like, and you should always write tests and things like that. But that's a huge one. I know for a fact is a huge one right there. Is every layer of additional abstraction, you're at each one of those layers, you're now adding more and more opportunities to break. Every single one of them, undeniably. There's no argument there. I don't care what people say. Even if they're like, this is verbose, you should just name it ID, you should just name it user. Like, I don't care. I'm not changing. Like, that is a mountain I will die on. That's a molehill I'll die on, because this is why, you know, or that example is why. It's because, you know, even at an enterprise production level, even at a small scale level, it just adds to the extra shenanigans. So I need to figure out how to adjust this, and I will. But hopefully today was fruitful in lessons of protecting your head, and maybe coming full circle. My head already hurts enough. Don't make it hurt even more by adding these extra layers of abstraction. My head already hurts enough. Don't make it hurt more. That's going to be the title of this video, guys. Thank you so much. Cheers.